Throughout the past 16 years of my life, I've read many different books with numerous themes and topics. Out of all of my reading, nothing stood out to me more than these two books, The Catcher in the Rye and The Stranger. The Stranger was interesting to me as it explores themes like absurdism, which is the idea that there is no inherent meaning to life. On the other hand, The Catcher in the Rye deals with topics like growing up, protecting children's innocence, and also alienation. Both Camus and Salinger explore similar themes. For example, how isolation and alienation can cause people to make important or rash decisions. Using different authorial choices like symbolism or dialogue, these authors are able to successfully show the ideas of alienation and isolation and how they can impact one's physical or mental behavior. These books also touch on their own unique topics that are separate from one another. For The Stranger, that's absurdism, and in Catcher in the Rye, they talk about protecting children's innocence. The Stranger, a French novel by Albert Camus written in 1942, follows Meursault. He is a detached and emotionally indifferent Frenchman. The story begins with Meursault receiving the news of his mother's death. In the following days, he continues his normal life routine and even begins a casual relationship with a woman named Marie, and he befriends his shady neighbor Raymond. Raymond involves Meursault in a conflict with an Arab man, leading to a beach confrontation where Meursault, in a moment of inexplicable impulse, shoots and kills the Arab. His actions are not permitted, but by lack of remorse and emotional detachment, he does it anyways, which makes him appear monstrous in the eyes of society. During the trial, Meursault's indifference, both to his mother's death and to his crime, becomes the focus rather than the murder itself. The prosecution paints him as a soulless man, and he is ultimately sentenced to death. As he awaits his execution, Meursault comes to accept the absurdity of life, realizing that its existence lacks inherent meaning. He finds peace in embracing the universe's indifference, meeting his fate without hope or appeal. The Catcher in the Rye by J.E. Salinger follows the experiences of Holden Caulfield, who is a cynical teenager who's recently been expelled from his school, Pensy Prep. Unwilling to return home and face his parents, he wanders through New York City, encountering various people and situations that deepen his feelings of loneliness and alienation. Throughout his journey, he criticizes the phoniness of the adult world, struggles with his own identity, and longs for genuine connection. His encounters with old acquaintances, teachers, and strangers only reinforce his sense of isolation as he fails to find the sincerity he desperately seeks. In this story, Holden's most significant relationship is with his younger sister, Phoebe, who represents the innocence that he wants to protect. He expresses a deep desire to be the catcher in the rye, which is someone who saves children from falling into the corruption of adulthood. However, by the end of the novel, he begins to realize that growing up is inevitable, and he cannot shield others from the reality of life. The story ends ambiguously, with Holden in a mental institute, reflecting on his experiences, but leaving the reader uncertain about his future. The novel captures themes of teenage angst, identity, alienation, and the struggle between preserving innocence and facing the complexities of adulthood. Throughout The Stranger, Camus explores many themes and topics, including absurdism, the meaninglessness of life, alienation, and detachment. Meursault is emotionally detached from the world, showing little grief over his mother's death, indifference to love, and no remorse for his crime. His inability to conform to societal expectations isolates him, ultimately leading to his condemnation. The themes and topics of these two different texts are very alike in many ways, and in some ways are also different. For example, both themes touch on alienation and isolation. Both protagonists, Meursault and Holden Caulfield, feel disconnected from society. Meursault is emotionally detached and indifferent to his social expectations, while Holden Caulfield is deeply critical of the phoniness of the adult world and longs for genuine connection. However, Marcel accepts his isolation with indifference, whereas Holden actively struggles against it, seeking meaningful relationships but ultimately feeling let down. Another way these texts are similar is when they talk about the themes of existentialism and absurdism versus teenage angst. Marceau's journey aligns with Camus' absurdist philosophy, where life is meaningless and death is inevitable. He ultimately embraces the absurdity of existence without seeking purpose. Holden, on the other hand, wrestles with his own identity and transition into adulthood. His struggle is not purely existential, but driven by a desire to preserve innocence and avoid the corruption of the adult world. Furthermore, in The Stranger, society condemns Marceau, not just for his murder, but for failing to conform emotionally. For example, when his mother dies, people attack him for not feeling remorse. Similarly, in The Catcher in the Rye, Holden resents societal norms and rebels against them, though his defiance is more rooted in personal frustration rather than acceptance of life's absurdity. Additionally, death plays a crucial role in both novels. Marceau passively accepts his execution and realizes that life's lack of meaningness frees him from his fear. Holden, on the other hand, haunted by his brother Ali's death, sees mortality as tragic and tries to shield children from growing up. While Marceau embraces death's inevitability, Holden resists it by clinging on to his childhood innocence. Ultimately, both novels explore the human struggle with meaning, belonging, and societal expectations. But while The Stranger leads toward existential acceptance, The Catcher in the Rye focuses on youthful resistance and emotional turmoil. In conclusion, The Catcher in the Rye and The Stranger both talk about themes like alienation, isolation, and societal judgment. But while The Stranger takes a more existential approach, The Catcher in the Rye explores teenage angst and resistance to adulthood. Both novels talk about the struggles of individuals who feel alienated and their search for meaning in an indifferent world. Thank you all for watching this video. I hope you all learned something new about these two books. Throughout reading these books, I learned a lot about their topics and their themes and how they are similar and different and what sort of authorial choices these authors used. So thank you all for watching this video, and I hope you guys have a great day.